3 years ago, at our anniversary celebration, my stepsister Melissa stole the spotlight by announcing her pregnancy, then accused me the next day of poisoning her food. The real culprit, however, turned out to be her boyfriend. I'm a 30-year-old woman, happily married to my husband, Brian, who's 32. We've been together for 7 years and married for 5, but nothing could have prepared us for the whirlwind of drama that unfolded with my family. Our family history is complicated. My parents divorced when I was 10, and my mom left without a word. Dad remarried Diane when I was 15, bringing her daughter Melissa into our lives. I had hoped for a bond with my new stepsister, but her jealousy made it impossible. It didn't help that my dad has always shown a clear preference for me, which only fueled Melissa's resentment. Melissa and I had different upbringings. While I focused on my studies and eventually built a successful business, Melissa struggled to find her way. She works as a low-level marketing assistant and often complains about her lack of opportunities, constantly comparing herself to me. Over the years, I've tried to support her, but her negative attitude and habit of blaming me for her problems have strained our relationship. Diane, her mother, has always defended her, no matter the situation, which led to many disagreements between Diane and my dad. Dad tries to keep the peace, but his closeness with me often puts him at odds with Diane and Melissa. Adding to the family complexity, I have a half-brother, Peter, who is Diane and Dad's son. He's a great kid and Dad adores him, but Melissa often feels neglected and overshadowed by both Peter and me. It's frustrating because, at 28, she should have outgrown this need for constant validation. Her envy seems to extend into every aspect of our lives, particularly when it comes to my successes, which she never celebrates. Instead, she claims that any achievement I've had is due to Dad's support, not my hard work. It's exhausting to be caught in this web of family drama, but I've tried to stay positive. One of my biggest challenges over the past few years has been dealing with infertility. 3 years ago, Brian and I were thrilled at the idea of starting a family. But after a year with no success, we visited a specialist and learned I had a condition that made conceiving difficult. It was devastating news, and we tried every possible treatment, including IVF, but nothing worked. The emotional toll was immense, leaving us drained and sometimes putting a strain on our marriage. At first, my family was supportive. Dad tried to comfort me, although he isn't the best with emotional situations, and Diane was eager to help. Melissa's support, however, soon turned into insensitive remarks. Once, she casually commented on how lucky I was to focus on my career without the burden of motherhood. That comment cut deep, knowing how much I longed to be a mom. It felt like she took pleasure in my struggles. Melissa would often mention her own plans for motherhood, almost as if to taunt me, boasting about how easily she'd get pregnant when the time was right. It was painful to hear her talk so casually about something I wanted so badly, and her lack of empathy left me feeling isolated. I tried not to let her comments affect me, but they added to the weight of my infertility struggles. Despite her behavior, I wanted to maintain some peace in the family. When Brian and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, I decided to host a large dinner party, where we would also announce the expansion of my business. We invited close family friends and some business associates. Although I had reservations, I extended an invitation to Melissa, hoping that one night could pass without drama. I spent weeks planning every detail to make the evening perfect. I even hired a caterer and set up sect for security, as our neighborhood had recently experienced a series of break-ins. When the night arrived, everything was going smoothly. My dad, Diane, Melissa, and Peter were all there, along with our friends and business colleagues. The guests seemed to be enjoying themselves, and even Melissa was surprisingly pleasant, which I took as a positive sign. I started to relax, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this night could go without incident. That hope was shattered when it came time for dessert. As the caterer unveiled a beautiful cake, Melissa stood up and announced, "I have news too, I'm pregnant. 3 months along." The room went silent and all eyes turned to her, including her boyfriend, James, who looked completely shocked. His reaction made it clear he hadn't known about the pregnancy. I was blindsided, feeling a mix of shock, hurt, and anger. Here was the announcement Brian and I had planned for weeks, overshadowed by Melissa's news. Given my infertility, this was the exact kind of moment I had dreamed of but thought I might never experience. And Melissa, knowing my struggles, had hijacked it. I forced a smile and congratulated her, even though my heart was breaking. Brian squeezed my hand, his silent support helping me hold it together. After offering my congratulations, I excused myself and went to the bathroom, needing a moment to compose myself. The night had taken such a painful turn, and I couldn't understand why Melissa would be so thoughtless. But then, she's always had a way of making everything about herself, even if it hurt others. The following morning, Brian and I were still processing what had happened. We tried to focus on the positive feedback we'd received from our friends, but the sting of Melissa's announcement lingered. Just as we sat down for breakfast, there was a loud knock on the door. I opened it to find Melissa, looking furious. She barged in, accusing me of poisoning her food to make her sick, because I was jealous of her pregnancy. She claimed she had spent the night and morning throwing up, and was convinced I had tampered with her meal. I was stunned. Poison her food? The accusation was absurd. I explained that the food was professionally catered, and there was no way it could have been tampered with, but she was relentless, demanding to see the exact footage to prove I hadn't done anything. Brian tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. Her voice grew louder, and she even threatened to call the police if I didn't show her the footage. Part of me wanted to throw her out, but I decided to show her the footage just to end the ordeal. As we watched the footage, something strange caught my eye. In the video, James could be seen lingering by the drinks table, and at one point, he subtly slipped something into Melissa's glass when she wasn't looking. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. James had tampered with her drink, not me. I was furious, but I knew I needed to confront him about it. I called James over and showed him the footage, demanding an explanation. At first, he tried to deny it, but when he saw the evidence, he admitted he had slipped a Plan B pill into Melissa's drink. He confessed that she had been pressuring him to have a baby, and he wasn't ready. When he found out she wasn't using birth control, he panicked and decided to spike her drink. I was horrified. This was no mere misunderstanding. He had secretly drugged her to prevent a pregnancy. I knew I had to tell Melissa, no matter how difficult it would be. When she arrived, expecting more drama over her poisoning accusations, I revealed the truth. She was initially in disbelief, but as she watched the footage, the reality sank in. Her shock quickly turned to rage. She turned on James, hurling accusations and insults, then revealed she had been lying about her pregnancy. She had pretended to be pregnant to pressure him into staying with her. I couldn't believe it. Her announcement at my party had been a complete fabrication, just a desperate attempt to trap James. Just then, my dad and Diane arrived. Melissa had apparently called them on her way over, claiming I was out to sabotage her. They walked in just as Melissa was in a heated confrontation with James. Diane immediately rushed to Melissa's defense, accusing me of setting Melissa up and ruining her life. My dad, however, took a step back, watching everything unfold with a look of disappointment. My dad confronted Melissa, telling her it was time to take responsibility for her actions. Melissa, of course, turned on him, claiming no one ever supports her, that she's always the black sheep, while I get all the attention. Diane joined in, blaming my dad for not standing by Melissa, and the two of them ended up in a shouting match. After they finally left, I felt utterly drained. What was supposed to be a happy occasion had turned into a family disaster. Melissa continued to lash out, even going as far as spreading rumors online that I had manipulated the sect footage to frame James. Friends reached out, worried about my reputation, but I assured them I was handling it. I debated taking legal action against Melissa for defamation, but the idea of escalating the drama was exhausting. A few months later, a miracle happened. Against all odds, I discovered I was pregnant naturally. Brian and I were overjoyed but cautious, deciding to keep the news private until I was well into my second trimester. When we eventually told close family, my dad was ecstatic, and even Diane seemed happy for us, though there was a bit of distance in her reaction. We decided not to tell Melissa directly, but news of the pregnancy eventually reached her through mutual friends. That evening, she showed up at our house, livid that we hadn't told her. She accused me of trying to erase her from the family, and demanded a role in the baby's life. Brian and I, however, had already decided to set boundaries. We explained that while we didn't want to cut her off completely, we needed space to focus on our family without her drama. That's when she lost control, yelling that we were isolating her, and threatening to make our lives miserable if we didn't let her be involved. Realizing that things had reached a breaking point, we contacted my dad and explained what had happened. He supported our decision to set boundaries, though Diane was visibly upset, insisting that family should stick together. Brian and I knew we had to prioritize our own peace, so we limited contact with Melissa and took extra security precautions at home. Months passed, and life began to stabilize. Then, out of nowhere, Melissa reached out, apologizing for her behavior. She explained that she had started therapy, and while she wasn't asking for forgiveness, she hoped we could slowly rebuild our relationship. Cautiously, I replied, acknowledging her message but keeping my distance. A year later, I'm thrilled to share that our beautiful daughter, Emily, was born, and life has been wonderful. Brian is an incredible father, and we're enjoying every moment with Emily. My dad has been a devoted grandfather, visiting us regularly, and even Diane is trying to be more present. As for Melissa, therapy seems to be helping her. She's made strides in her life and even secured a new job. While I'm cautiously optimistic, I know that trust takes time to rebuild. For now, I'm focused on my family and grateful for this new chapter. After years of drama, loss, and growth, I finally feel like I'm in a place of happiness and hope. Thank you, everyone, for your support throughout this journey. Your words have meant the world to me. Here's to a brighter, more peaceful future with my family.
Did you hear? Apparently, Brian started a podcast called Deep Thoughts where he just reads his old tweets out loud and tries to sound profound.